Hello, you're listening to the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, and I'm so excited to have you join us on the conversation today. All we're doing is exploring the many layers of our world and discovering the diversity of voices and stories that exist within it. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and that it adds new and colorful layers to your life. Hello and welcome back to the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, as always. And today we have the wonderful Rennie, also known as Rennie the Resource, in our guest seat today. Rennie is a financial literacy, career development, travel, and lifestyle content creator. She really is the bee's knees. And she's also the host of Don't Go Broke Trying podcast, which is all about, as the title suggests, not going broke while trying to live your best life. And today we're just going to be exploring all the different layers of a topic that maybe not many of us are comfortable talking about, which is finances and financial anxiety. So I'm really very excited. Welcome to the podcast, Rennie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Taya. I'm excited about this conversation.
It's such an important conversation. So I guess we can start off with you. How did you get into finance and financial literacy?
So I feel like I have like a different path than most people, but basically my parents were very financially literate, or they started to learn about financial literacy when they moved from Nigeria, and they had to learn a completely new financial system in England.
Mm-hmm.
So when my dad started to learn about financial literacy, he was like, "Oh, this is amazing. So I never knew about money before, and I must ensure that my children are financially literate when they grow up." So honestly, since I can remember, he has been teaching me about money. And so, for example, little things like opening my bank account when we moved to Canada when I was 4 years old, little things like that just gave me a sense of like understanding money. And I thought everybody had this mindset, and I thought everyone knew about money and their parents taught them this, until I went to university and one of my friends was telling me about a credit card that she had and how you only have to pay the minimum balance. And I was like, I don't think that's right. And she was like, yeah, it is. My mom taught me. And I was like, no, my dad taught me the exact opposite. And then at that point, I realized, oh, wow, people don't actually know about financial literacy like I thought they did. And then in 2020, I was able to purchase my house because I had been investing in the stock market for 5 years at that point, and I used the proceeds to purchase a house. Thank you. And because I was 23 at the time, a lot of my friends, I just posted my keys online. I mean, a lot of my friends were like, oh my gosh, what is this? You need to tell us more. And then honestly, I just started posting about my journey. And now 3 years later, here I am doing it full time, just sharing with people about financial literacy.
I love it. I love that it's such a wonderful niche to have as well within the content creation space, because I know a lot of people think that fashion, lifestyle, all these things are kind of done, but they're not really. I mean, you can have a niche and include that in, and you've done that really, really, really well. So before this, you were working as a freelance marketing manager, and as well as in kind of wealth and finance. So
Yes.
how did you make the shift from I'm working full-time into I'm going into being a full-time content creator?
Yeah, so it was just when I bought my house in 2020. We just had a lot of time right at home because it was COVID.
Yeah.
Everybody was home. I didn't have my 2 hours of commuting every day. So I just had a lot of time, and I just decided to post that first video. And I would say my channel started to pick up pretty quickly, thankfully. And within 3 months, I was monetized on the platform on YouTube.
Wonderful.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I made $100. That's what I made my first month. I was like, this is game changing. And I swear, I feel like my life changed like after that moment. And I realized that, wow, like I can talk and share my story and I can get paid for it. That's so cool. That was my logic. And then and then I kept posting and kept posting and kept posting, and I started to make decent money on YouTube and on my other social media platforms. And I worked at a bank, right? I was working in wealth management at a bank. So there was really like a direct conflict of interest between what I was trying to do and what they were trying to do, right? Because if, for example, one bank reaches out to me and they want to do a brand deal on my page and I work at this bank, I have to turn down that brand deal, right? Yeah. So it was basically blocking my bag. And I was like, okay, I'm
You
going to
gotta
jump
go.
into this and try to do it full time. Yeah. I was like,
You have
something's
to
got to
go.
give. Something's got to give. And it's not going to be what I enjoy doing. Like, it's not that I didn't enjoy work, but, you know, working for someone else, you know, it has its pros and
100%.
cons. So, yeah, I leaped into content creation October 1st, 2021, and yeah, I'm so glad that I did it. Honestly, has changed my life.
No, it's a fantastic thing. I mean, I also wasn't in full-time work when I initially launched Layers the first time in 2020. And I just felt like the moment I did it, I was like, I know that I can never go back to that.
Yeah.
Like, it might not be
Yeah.
where I want it to be, but I know I can never go back to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard
So
to go back to that. Like, I can't even imagine going back. But I never say never. But it would have to be a really good job to get me to go back to corporate. Yeah.
you know what's so funny? I always think, what if someone offered me like a really insane amount of money? Would I go back into corporate? And I just keep thinking, oh, I just don't know. Every
I
time I think
know.
about it, I don't know what would make it an enjoyable experience. I'm like, maybe if I partnered with someone for like a few months, maybe 6 months on a project, like maybe that would be exciting to me. But full
Yeah.
time, like reporting, line managers, dealing with coworkers, I can't. I don't think I can do it anymore.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah.
It would be a big transition, especially because I love to travel so much. And now there's no limit to how much travel because I can work anywhere. But I can't imagine a job that would be like 3 weeks vacation a year. I'd be like, oh, no, I can't do this.
No.
I can't do this. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's the creative
Yeah.
expression as well, that if you feel something and you think, oh, I would like to explore this with the kind of stuff I'm creating, that you can just do that without having to go through so many different channels.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Well, let's just say we're not going back, okay? Creativity will pay off for us.
For
Yeah,
now.
it'll pay off. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. So I think it's amazing that you transitioned from corporate into content creation. I think that leads us perfectly into what we're talking about today. I think sometimes, I mean, statistically speaking, one of the major causes of people staying in jobs that they don't enjoy or they're not happy is, how am I going to be able to afford everything else if I leave this stable job? And I had a conversation with Michelle G sometime this year, and she used to work as the CEO for Ebony magazine, and she was saying that, talking about taking calculated risks and making sure that you have your finances in order. But how much can you ever have your finances 100% in order? I know that might be a bad question asking a financial wealth manager if that's the case, but I guess it leads us into a conversation about financial anxiety. Were you anxious at first, thinking, oh, how am I going to do this financially? Or had you taken those calculated risks ahead of time to be like, actually, no, I'm pretty confident stepping out?
Yeah, I definitely was not. I was a little anxious, but not about the money because, as Michelle said, I got all my ducks in order before I left. So I would say that I planned meticulously. I would say I'm a risk taker, right? But I like to take calculated risks. No, just leaping off with no, like I don't have the stomach for that. So, for example, I knew that I was making around like $3,000 a month from my social media at the time. And if I made that, honestly, in Toronto, it's a very high cost of living place. So that's not enough money to comfortably survive. But I knew that, okay, I live with my parents. So like that's one thing covered. I have tenants in my house, so they're paying for my mortgage. And then I was like, I built up this fund where I have enough money there so that if I don't make money for 6 months, I will be okay. And I will just have to get a good job and go back to corporate if it doesn't work out. So I was very specific about this. And the way I like to call this my VEX fund, or some people call it their FU fund, or, something like that. Yeah. And I have that VEX fund, and I was building it. Honestly, from the day I started at my company, I started building that fund, which is so funny.
I love it so much.
Yeah. They had a program where we could invest in the shares of the company, and they would match my contribution. So if I put in $500, they're going to put in $500. So every single paycheck, I contributed, I think it was 4% of my paycheck towards that. And by the end of the time I was leaving, which was like 3 years later, it was $30,000 that I had in their shares. So
Good
that's
for
really what I
you.
used to quit the job. Yeah.
Good for you. Very, very good for you. I think, I mean, as the name suggests, Rennie the resource, I think you're just very resourceful. I mean, having listened to like the podcast and even the tips and confessions, even though we're laughing, but it's like, they're still very educational. But how do you encourage people to be, or to think more resourcefully when it comes? Because no, most people wouldn't think to do that. They may not even know that there's an option for them to do that.
hmm I feel like when it comes to financial anxiety, it comes from not knowing, right? And
Mm,
oftentimes you don't like, how do we even know what we don't know? That's the problem. So I find that asking
mm,
questions is very helpful. One thing that I did
mm,
when I got into my company, I was like, oh, are there any programs that you guys have been involved in? Because you guys have been working here for 10 years. And one of my coworkers actually told me about the share matching program and that I should get involved with it. I also looked through all the HR documents and I was like, okay, like, let's see, like, is there any free money that they're giving us? Because I'm not trying to work for the rest of my life for these people. So any free money I can possibly get, are you going to match my pension? Are you going
mm-hmm,
to, contribute to my retirement? All these things I was looking for. So I find that
mm-hmm,
being curious has really helped. But let's say just in general with financial anxiety or money anxiety, I would say having that emergency fund, regardless of if you plan to leap into entrepreneurship or not, is so
mm-hmm.
helpful because you never know
Very
what can
much so.
happen. And you don't want to feel like you're constantly going to be knocked off of the goals that you currently have, or just having to go back into debt because an emergency may happen. I didn't have an emergency fund a long time ago, and then I was always like, oh my gosh, if anything happens, and I was working minimum wage job, I was like, oh my gosh, if anything happens, what's gonna happen to me? Like, I have my parents, but I don't
Mm-hmm,
like asking them for money, so what's gonna happen? So I feel like
mm-hmm.
everyone, if they started to build out an emergency fund, it would lessen a lot of anxiety that they do have.
I remember someone once said something about an emergency fund. I mean, I implemented it when I had started my first proper job outside of university, because I'd done like 3 degrees before I went to work. So I think the guy was saying, he said do 70, 10, 10, 10. And I don't remember how he split them, but he was like 10% is your savings, 10% is your emergency fund. I don't remember what the other 10 was, but he was like 70 is like your I'm spending money. And I remember thinking, isn't that quite high for I'm just spending money? Because you're so right about an emergency fund. I remember when I wasn't working, because in 2020, I basically spent the whole year looking for a job. And I remember if one little thing happened, it would be like the end of the world for me. A boiler breaking down would be like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God. Even random things. I remember someone stole my phone from me in either 2020 or 2021. And when I came home, I literally just went to bed because I was like, I can't even replace this phone because all my money is like assigned to every something specific. And I think when you don't have that leeway, it just makes you it just makes you anxious. So for sure, unexpected things are definitely a financial trigger, especially when it comes to anxiety. When you look at your own financial journey, what do you look at and you think, I know for a fact that this is a trigger for me financially, or it can be a trigger for me financially?
I would say like I like to look at triggers like spending triggers, for example. I
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who follows me, they know I like to shop, for example. And I don't like to shop in person, but online shopping is definitely my thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
found that I would spend a lot of money on online shopping when I was doing it at night when I was half asleep in my bed, right? So now I've realized that you really like this is a trigger for you to spend excessively. So now I have this
Mm-hmm.
thing where it's like, okay, I may scroll at night, but then I'm going to actually see if I still want it in the morning, right? And I find I spend so much less money because oftentimes I don't actually want these things. I was just buying them because it was fun for me to scroll at night. So that's an example of a financial trigger that I have. And I think that everyone should try to figure out what their financial triggers are. Because when you see
Mm-hmm.
why you're spending money, like
Mm-hmm.
specific instances that cause you to spend money, or the psychology behind why you spend money, I found that like that's a game changer, and it will help you to, if you actually want to change, then it will help you to change the habits that you currently do have. Yeah.
100%. I think it's the same. I mean, financial anxiety, it's the same thing as any other anxiety that anybody, it has the same psychology, I guess, as other anxieties that people may have. So that might be shopping, it might be drinking, it might be smoking, it might be, whatever you feel gives you that release. So I completely get that. Sorry, I've lost my notes because I was going to ask you something. Okay. So when it comes to decision making and discipline, how much of that do you feel factors into alleviating financial anxiety? Because there's kind of like this thing, I wouldn't really say on social media. I don't know if pop culture or social media, I don't know. We use them interchangeably, that sometimes I'm like, I don't even know which one is the correct saying, but where it's like the money will come back, but the experiences will not. So just go, which is true. The money will come back, but in the time frame that it takes to come back, are you going to be at peace? Is usually what I ask myself. So, what would you say about discipline and decision making in alleviating financial anxiety?
Yeah, I think discipline plays a huge factor into it. I'm big on like spending money on the things that you love and not spending money on the things that you don't really care about. Obviously, there's some things like housing and taxes that we kind of have to spend money on, but for the most part, I think that being disciplined towards the goals that one has can be a big way to lessen your financial anxiety when it's like, okay, I have these 5 goals, and something that's like basically spending money on the things that you value-based spending. So if, for example, you know that job loss is a big trigger for you, like the idea of potential job loss triggers your financial anxiety, then you know that, okay, something that's really important to me is having safety in my finances and knowing that I have a cushion that I can rely on. So that you put your discipline, and when you're planning out your budget, your discipline will be that I want to fully fund my emergency fund or my VEX fund so that if that does happen, or so that my financial anxiety is lessened, if that makes sense. And if you automate things, it's not even something that relies on you to do it. It's actually something that the bank or your computer is doing on your behalf. So you can basically alleviate that anxiety that you did have previously. So that's the way I like to look at it. I know it's a lot easier said than done. Like, okay, I am scared of losing my job. I fund my fund, but discipline, I honestly understanding your trigger, it's easier said than done. I will say that it's a lot easier said than done.
100%. Like, I had a podcast episode, a solo episode, a couple of years ago, where I was like, discipline is actually a form of self-care. And I don't feel like we talk about that enough, but discipline is a form of self-care, whether that's in your boundaries with yourself and your finances or with other people. But it's like I want to explore the topic at some other point. It's a conversation for a different day, but how much so discipline links to actually having like freedom, like proper freedom. How do you think social media affects people today in terms of wealth? And I want us to kind of explore this topic in 2 ways: wealth in terms of what they think wealth looks like, and how much they think they should be having financially at different stages of their life. It's quite
Great
broad, I know.
question. No, it's a great question. I was speaking about my mentor about this yesterday, where she mentors a bunch of like, let's say girls in their early 20s, and they're all like, I want to be rich one day. I want to be able to get the latest bag. I want to be able to drive a Range Rover. This is this. And she was like, what does that have to do with being rich? Especially in Canada, like we have a very credit-based economy, and you can buy any of those things on credit, right? So I feel like social media has played a big role in making people think that the glamorous things that we see equate to riches, when in reality they do not. And it 100%. Makes you compare. A lot of people have got into this comparison trap where they're comparing themselves to every other person that they see on social media. And the thing is that I think people, it's not even just that they're comparing themselves to like Beyonce, because there's a book I read actually about this called Worry Free Money, and it says you need to treat everybody like Beyonce. You need to treat everybody like Beyonce. You wouldn't, if you saw that Beyonce just bought a Range Rover, you wouldn't say, "Oh, Beyonce bought a Range Rover. Why can't I buy a Range Rover?" Because the thing is, you feel like you know how much Beyonce. You feel like you know how much Beyonce makes, right? So you're not going to compare
It's so
yourself to
true.
Beyonce because it makes no sense. But then you see your friend on social media, or you see an influencer who, they're the same age as me, they live in the same city as me. I think they make around the same money as me. So why could they get a Range Rover and I can't? But the reality is that you literally have no idea about their finances. Treat them like
At
Beyonce.
all.
Treat them like you have no idea about the finances, because you would be so surprised about the people that I've met. I have an accountability group where I keep people accountable to their financial goals. A lot of people have, first of all, they have daddy and mommy's money that is funding their lifestyle, and you're comparing yourself to them when you have no daddy and mommy's money. Makes no sense. A lot of them are just, a lot of people are doing bad things to get money, and that's how they're funding
100%.
their lifestyle, and now you're comparing yourself to them. Makes no sense. A lot of people are in serious debts because they're funding their lifestyle.
Oh,
So like,
100%.
just to compare yourself to them, it makes zero sense. And I think social media has really made it even easier to compare yourself. But the reality is, you need to treat every single person like they are Beyonce. Okay. You don't know their
I love
financial
that.
situation.
I love that. I feel like if you're listening to this and anytime you feel like looking at someone and they have something that I want and I don't feel like I'm in that place, just compare them. Compare them to Beyonce. Just picture them as
Exactly.
Beyonce. Because it's so true. I think there's sometimes a proximity to people, that a proximity to someone, and it makes you feel like, well, why shouldn't I be like that? But it's like you're not living the same life, dear. So please.
At all.
Please
Cut your, what do they call it? Cut your cloth
cut your
according
coat
to
to
your
fit your
size or whatever.
to fit your size.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom
Yeah.
actually says cut your coat to fit the actual fabric yards you have before you go and want a dress that you don't have enough yards even to create. That's what my
Exactly.
mom always
Yeah,
says.
it's so true. Shout out to mama. She's right. Yeah, like, stop comparing yourself to other people. Even like people like me, who I'm extremely transparent, people will still compare themselves to me. And I'm like, guys, I have had literally 23 years of financial literacy education. You just moved to Canada. You just started learning about financial literacy, and it doesn't make sense to compare the two of us, right? Like, yeah, so.
It's interesting because I read a comment. I was scrolling through Instagram one time. I saw this Nigerian athlete, Divine Uduru, I think that's his last name, and he was talking about how he was running for in a US college or whatever. And I went through the comments. And one of my friends was saying to me that they were looking at the same post, and then they said, someone was like, "Oh, now he's moved to America and he's making cool millions," and we were like,
Yes. And you know what? That's a big misconception that I find that Nigerians in Nigeria have about people abroad. Everyone thinks everyone here is balling, and I'm just like, you guys would be shocked. You guys would be very shocked to know that a lot of us are balling on a budget. A lot of us are in serious debt. Yeah. If you see the debt to income ratio in Canada, it's like for every $1 that people make, there are in $2 of debt. So most people are funding their lifestyle with debt. Oh yes. Oh yeah. So don't compare. See everyone as Beyonce, even the people abroad. See them as Beyonce.
See everybody. You know what's so funny? There are some people that are going to be like, Beyonce and Jay-Z, I can live the lifestyle, because every time they back in the day when they would be like, Jay-Z has reached the top Forbes list, everyone would be posting it. I'm thinking,
yeah.
Don't do that. I get it, because it's good to have something to aspire to, and if you don't get there, you get at least further along. So I get it, but I think it was even Diddy that was like, people say, "Oh, I want to have Diddy money," and he was like, "I'm 50. Like, I've been working in this game for decades and decades. You can't just wake up one day and start in the industry and be like, you want Diddy money. That doesn't make sense."
Yeah, it's the reality of social media right now.
I like the Beyonce thing, but I think I like the, I guess, Beyonce analogy, because it's very true. But I think also another part of social media is when people say, oh, I want to be rich so I can have the bag, the watches, the holidays, the go on the yachts. Is there a healthier way that people can be redefining what it means to be wealthy, especially for young people? Because the truth is, the younger generation and are actually having a wonderful time in terms of they can choose to be a content creator full time. This is still new for all of us, being like, oh wow, we can content create full time and make money. Whereas for them, it would probably be, some of them may never even go into a corporate job. Might just be the path that they take and make a lot of money from. But how wealth is sort of, I guess the construction of wealth nowadays is a bit confusing, I think.
Yeah. I think that it's fine to want these things. It's fine to want the nicest bag and the nicest shoes and the nicest go on luxury trips. There's nothing wrong with that. But just know that like it doesn't equate to wealth just because you can go on a vacation. I think that's all I tell people, because anyone who sees me knows I've been on like 5 different vacations this year. I definitely spend quite a bit on traveling, but it's because but that doesn't make me wealthy. And like anyone who sees, I would say I obviously am very comfortable, but I would say true wealth to me is having money that is making money for you. So I would say that, for example, I have an investment portfolio over $200,000, and then that money that I get from there can now fund the liabilities that I'm buying. For example, a car, a vacation, all of these things that are not really going to make me any more money. So I think, again, I'm pro treating yourself, getting the things that you wanted, but first, protect your future by investing in different things that can make you money long term, and then use the money from that to then, fund your lifestyle if you want to. But yeah, treat yourself within reason.
Oh, I fully believe treat yourself. My mom and we had a conversation last week, and she was like, you're traveling a lot, which by her standards of traveling a lot, she just means twice. Like I went to Spain and I went to Amsterdam, and that was traveling a lot. But we're having a back and forth about it, and I just said to her, different things make different people happy. People like to buy bags and shoes, and that's wonderful. And some people just like to travel. So I'm all for treating yourself within reason. I think a lot of the things that, even if you see something on social media and you're like, you know what, I really like that and I would really like to experience that. Most times, if you look hard enough, you find that you don't have to spend that much money to get that experience. You really don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really, really don't.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also just the concept of like delayed gratification. If you do want it, that's great, but you can, work towards getting it. It's not that you put it, on a credit card today. And also I always want to understand the money psychology behind things. Like, why is it that you want this specific thing? Is it because you are trying to impress this person, or is it because you truly want this thing? And a lot of times when we actually ask ourselves this question, we want a lot of things because we have been told that this is a status of wealth, or everybody else has it, so I think I should also have it. But what are the things that you truly want? And that's the question I would ask. Like some people have asked me, why don't you have any designer purses? And I'm like, I should get designer purses just because I make a certain amount of money? Like, that doesn't make sense, because it's not something I care about right now in my life. When I do care about it, I will buy one, right? So I just want everyone to really sit with themselves, ask yourself, is this truly what I want, or what is the reason that I want what I want? Even things like weddings, for example. We know Nigerian wedding culture is a lot, especially Yoruba wedding culture is they're huge weddings. And I always say I do not want a big wedding at all. It's not something that I want. And a lot of people just want big weddings because they've seen everybody else have a big wedding, and it's like the thing to do. So again, just ask yourself and do a check-in with yourself before you make big financial decisions.
100%. It's so funny about the wedding thing, because wanting a big wedding you desire it. There's nothing wrong with desiring it, but when you get there, it will really humble you, because you'll be like, wow, this is how much things cost to get this beautiful wedding. Sometimes I look at people's weddings online and I'm like, you have money. You have a lot of money, because there's just no way that you could have put this together without a lot of money. And I think sometimes there's a dreaming and then there's a reality of it. And then that's when people find themselves going into debt. I want to talk about the emotional side of things. I know that you said that you have an accountability group where you help people stay accountable to their financial goals, which is amazing. Is there something that you find that emotionally comes up as a consistent thing when people talk about their finances? Because I know you had a podcast with, I think they're called Conscious Economics, and it was like a finance therapy, and which was actually really, really enjoyable and really great. But I was wondering, from that and in your accountability group, are there things emotionally that come up when it comes to, I'm anxious about my finances?
I would say a lot of times, the things that make people anxious, I would say it's a lot of the like fear of the unknown, right? Job loss, that's a big thing.
Career
And
transition.
yeah, different things like that. I would say that's a big one that makes people to be extremely anxious about their finances. I would say a lot of times, most people that I've met have an avoidant relationship with money as well. So it's instead of looking at how much they're spending each month and how much they are making each month, they have no idea. And it's just that they spend, and they wonder why they can't save every month. So what I do is that I actually sit down with my group members. So we do one-on-ones, and I actually make them tell me how much they spend in each category every month and then how much they make. And oftentimes I'm like, yeah, there's no wonder why you can't save, because you literally are spending more than you make every month. So obviously you're going to have to take money out of your savings account, and you're getting down on yourself because of that, because you're like, oh, I can't save. And I'm like, yeah, there's no wonder. So I feel like that's a big thing. Like, people are simply avoidant with their finances. They don't touch them. They don't look at them. And I think that's harder to do in a non-credit based economy. But here, it's extremely easy to just put everything on the credit card and pay off. If you make $3,000 a month and you're spending $3,100 a month, just put that extra $100 on the credit card. Next month, $100, next month, $100. And I've met people who are 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000 in debt, and they don't know how they've gotten there. And it's because every month they're just avoiding looking at the reality. Your face right now is sending me. Yeah.
No, my face is because I remember having to basically use a credit card when I was out of a job for an extended period of time, and being £200-300 down on that credit card was like the worst possible thing for me ever, that I can't even think of $50,000-60,000. I'm running away.
Yeah.
I'm leaving the country. I'm running. I can't pay that. I won't be able to sleep.
Right. And for many of these people, they have never actually looked to see the balance. Like, I'm the one who had to be like, okay, now open up this card, open up this card, so they can see the total balance. And then the another thing that happens a lot is some of them have the money. They actually do have the money. But we have this sometimes thing towards debt where it's like, oh, it's just there, it'll keep growing, whatever. And then people have the money to pay off their debt, but then they just are not paying it off. That's what I found often. So I have to sit down with people as well, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna open your credit card statement. Look how much interest they're charging you every single month. You have a $2,000 balance. They're charging you like $100 in interest every month. Do you realize that you bought something for say you bought something for $2,000. Why is it costing you $2,100? Like, that doesn't make sense. And you have $3,000 in your checking account. Like, that is something that happens a lot. So, that's a big one for me. It's just like the avoidant nature towards finances. And I don't blame anyone, because the reality is that finances can be confusing, and nobody teaches us about them. So when you have to face it by yourself as an adult for the first time, it can be pretty overwhelming, which is why I think sitting down with someone and having like an accountability partner or just somebody who can guide you through it really helps people feel like they can actually, they can actually tackle it. But I don't know. It's a lot. A lot of people have never done a budget. They don't know how much money they're making. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an easy thing to do. But before I even go into that, follow up to your point, if you're listening and you have a lot of debt and you're even getting anxious just at the thought of listening to this, please ask for some help, whether it's someone to help you out with your finances, keep you accountable. Don't be ashamed to at least confide in your closest friends, because really and truly everyone is going through something financially that you don't know about. And I think instead of continuing the debt and just pretending that it's not there, it's worth actually just being like, how can I start putting money into coming out of this debt? And that is going to be a sacrifice. It's never going to feel easy, because what you said about people having the money to pay it off but not paying it off, it's like, it's a sacrifice. It's always going to be sacrificial to come out of that debt. But think of all the free, imagine your life without the debts, and imagine all the freedom that you're going to have. So it's definitely it's definitely worth the sacrifice. For sure.
And I find that when you do tell people, like your friend group or somebody, again, it's a kind of like they're keeping you accountable. And also they may know that, okay, we have been going out and eating at these expensive restaurants every single weekend, but when you tell people your goals, like, okay, guys, I'm on a plan to like pay off this $10,000 I have in debt right now. They're not as likely to pressure you to go out to do certain things, or maybe they'll cover you because they know the journey that you're on. But if you don't tell anybody, they don't have the opportunity to help you or to give you any support or guidance as well.
I also think when you have a secret, there is nothing more that keeps a person in the same place as much as having a secret. When you have a secret, it's like a trap. It will just trap you in there because you're the only one that knows, you're the only one that's going through it. And then there's shame and there's guilt. And in the psychology of shame and guilt, it will just take you right back to the place where you started. And honestly, it's not the worst thing. It's not the worst thing. And there are loads of therapists online who focus on financial therapy who can also help out as well. And of course, you can reach out to Rennie and maybe join her accountability group.
Yes, we'll be opening for this in December again. So you can sign up for my mailing list at rennietheresource.com, and then you'll get all the information there to sign up.
Wonderful. That's so good. So when it comes to not knowing how to manage money, oh my gosh. Again, when I first started working, when I got out of uni, I remember I would get like my paycheck and I'd pay my rent, and then I'm like, I'm good. And then just carry on with life. And when direct debits come out from your phone bill or your energy bill, it's just like they've come out. But at some point I was like, money is going through my hands like water, and I really don't even know where it's going. And then I came across this video. I think it was Patricia Bright. She has I don't know if she still does it, but she had a platform called The Break, and they focus a lot on finances. And she did this budgeting thing. It was like a template on Excel, and you would just put in your phone bill, your energy bill, literally your income, and then you split it into, if you donate to charities, you put that all in there, and then it will leave you with what is actually like you're spending money outside of bills. And when I saw my spending money outside of bills, I was shocked, because I was like, there's a reason I'm always broke before my payday, because I wasn't paying attention to that. Because honestly, it was just like, oh, there's just money in my account and it's okay. And it covers everything that I needed to cover. But being able to see this is actually what you can spend with, it was a real game changer in how I did my finances, because I'm like, there's certain things within your bank account that are assigned to certain things. There's money assigned to rent, money assigned to bills. etc., etc. But yeah, it's how do you encourage people to actually pay attention to, in your accountability group, to their finances and actually track where, not to track each and every penny, because that can be a bit depressing, like calorie tracking, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think you could bring up a great point. And I actually had the same experience where I listened to, it was like probably my first year of university, or maybe first year working full time. And I listened to a podcast by Clever Girl Finance. And they started talking about budgeting. And I was like, okay, obviously I've heard of a budget, but then they broke down like you're tracking everything that goes into your account and everything that goes out of your account. And then you see how much you are spending every month. I did that for the first time. And I saw that I spend so much money on food. Like, an insane amount of money on food. And you know, there is actually rice at home. There's actually rice at home. But I was eating out every single day. Yeah. I was eating out every single day while I was at while I was commuting to work, because there was a food court there. And I'm like, yeah, it's just like $7 a day, $8 a day, $9 a day. But imagine I'm going 5 days a week. Let's say $10 a day. That's $50 a week. That's, you know, it adds up. And then if I go out with my friends, like there's a lot more where that comes from. So, I would say that for anybody who is maybe struggling with their finances right now, or you feel like you don't have a handle on them, the very basic thing that I would encourage you to do would be to figure out your budget, figure out the inflows and figure out the outflows. And how I suggest people approach this is, okay, you sit down and you look at your bank statements for the past 3 months, and you're like, okay, for the past 3 months, this much has come into my account every single month. So on average, I get paid. If you have a salary job, obviously it will be the same amount each month. But if you are someone who works hourly, it may be a different amount. So just take the average amount that comes into your account each month. So say you get paid $3,000 every single month. Then you then look at, okay, what are my bills each month? And it could be my rent is this much, my phone bill is this much, my food, entertainment, all these different things that you're paying for are this much. And then you can see how much on average is coming into your account each month and how much is coming out. And that will give you a number that you can work with. A lot of times when you do this, as I said earlier, you will see that you actually have spent way, way, way more money every single month or maybe it's just equal. So you make $3,000, you're also spending $3,000. And then you wonder why you can't save. So once you've realized this, then I would say you can see where you can cut back, or if you can increase income in some areas. And then the thing that I like to do is I like to see how much I can comfortably put towards my goals. So if I have a goal that is I want to travel every month and I want to put $100 every month away to travel, I want to put $200 away towards investing and $100 in my emergency fund every month, then you have to figure out, can I comfortably afford this, or am I going to have to cut back in some other areas? And then you can automate those transfers again, so that once you get paid, the money automatically goes from your checking account to the specific savings goals or whatever goal that you currently have. And if you have debt, obviously that should be your priority. Well.
Don't be traveling anywhere.
Yes,
not yet, at least.
Stay home. Yeah.
Not yet, at least. No, that's really, really good. Do you have a budgeting hack that you're like, I wish more people knew this?
One thing that I do that I don't think most people do is I update my budget every single week. So I think a lot of people, they wait till the end of the month and then they calculate everything that has gone on throughout the month and see where they are. But me, because I'm so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's too many numbers. I spent a lot this month, and then I just don't do the budget. So what I do instead is on a Sunday, I sit down, and it's helpful if you have a friend who can do this with you, so that you're both keeping each other accountable. But on a Sunday, I will sit down and then we'll both sit and update our budget. And when you do it every week, it's a lot more manageable than trying to calculate everything for the whole month. Another thing that you can do if like doing it manually isn't your thing is you can actually use apps that do it automatically for you. So I know in Canada we have an app called Mint. We also have Every Dollar, a bunch of different apps, and they will connect directly to your bank account. And then it will categorize all your transactions for you, which I think is so much easier than trying to do it yourself. I'm just a manual person. I like doing it manually, but I think for the average person, start off with the automatic. And then if manual is your thing, move over to manual. Yeah.
Roberto Manu. I want to touch on something. So when you said having a friend to do it with is always helpful, I find that too, being able to just be like, okay, we're setting up a Zoom, or come to mine, I'll come to yours, and let's just do stuff together. It just helps productivity wise. What would you say are a few benefits to having community when it comes to one's journey to financial freedom?
Oh, okay. One of the things is, again, I think I kind of mentioned it earlier, but because you both have a shared vision or a shared goal, it's kind of like the things that are distracting from it. For example, partying every weekend and going to a booth and maybe paying for paying for drinks. That may be out of you guys may be doing things that are more aligned to your goal. Maybe it's like, okay, we're gonna go for a coffee instead of buying drinks at the club or whatever this week. And it's not that you can't have fun with those friends, but now your friend understands that they are also on the same path that you are. So therefore, it's like, it's easier for you guys to do activities that are in line with your goals. Another thing that I think is one of the big benefits is that, just that accountability every single week. Even it's like the gym, if I know my friend is going to meet me at the gym at 7 a.m., even if I'm awake, I don't want to go, but I'm going to go because I know my friend is waiting for me there, and they'll be annoyed if I'm not there. So that's another thing. It's like every Sunday, have my money date or whatever we call it. And then we sit down for just 30 minutes and we talk all about, we just update our budgets for the month, and it just keeps me accountable, helps me. And then also motivation. Sometimes our motivation is fleeting, but as we said, discipline is way greater than motivation. So having that person to keep you accountable, it gives a sense of discipline that will help you when your motivation is fleeting.
100%. Also, and it just takes the pressure off, because sometimes it's actually daunting, and it actually breeds its own set of anxiety when you're like, I have to sit down and actually deal with all of my finances and confront the feelings that maybe I have that come up when I have to sit down and actually address it or tackle it head on. So sometimes community actually helps to just make it not that deep. So I want to switch gears a bit. I was speaking to a friend of mine and I was telling her about this podcast, recording this episode. And she was like, one thing I'm so curious about is kind of wealth and financial anxiety after you've made money. Because she was telling me about a family member who they had lost their family business and their home had burnt down when they were younger. And then now, I mean, they're doing really well for themselves. They own multiple properties. Like, they're doing really well, essentially. But they go to bed every night with a real fear that tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I could be homeless. And it's like, but in your reality, that's probably not going to happen. But I know for a fact that sometimes if you've gone through a really hard financial period, when you come out of that, it's almost like a trauma. It just follows and follows and follows. It's till today, I could have 100,000 in my account. I mean, I don't, but I could. And if I did, I would still feel anxious if something broke down in the house. I would still feel, how much is this going to set me back? Even though it won't set me back,
This is a hard one. And I think honestly, it goes back to like money psychology, right? And it's like, you really have to go and dig deep into, why do I feel these things that I feel, and what is the reality? Because again, that person, if they're doing well, and homelessness isn't really, it's not in their purview at all. It's not something that they should really be concerned about. But the reality is they're still in that lack or scarcity mindset that, obviously, understandably, because of the trauma that they did go through. So I think this is honestly like a discussion to bring to therapy so that they can unlearn and get past that. But also just from I know therapy is not the most financially accessible. from a standpoint of like putting money away regularly, I think that towards the things that you're anxious about, I think that is something that can really help. For example, as you said, if something breaks down in this house, I'm going to be like, oh my God, how much is this going to put me back? But if you had a house fund, for example, that you put even $100 away every month and you put it into your house fund, you know that, okay, if something did happen, I'm not taking it out of any of my other goals. There's like a specific account for this. And people could argue that, okay, this cash that I'm putting in this house fund, it could be better served it could be growing more if I put it in investments, for example. But I think peace of mind is an investment in itself. Like putting money away towards that is an investment in itself. So I personally, like, I have a pretty large emergency fund. And again, I live at home. So do I really need that much money? I could probably put it in the stock market and make it grow more. But it just gives me a sense of security that I think helps me going forward. Yeah. So trauma is real. Don't ignore it.
Yeah.
Maybe try to work through it as well. Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it's definitely a therapy thing. I think there's so many things that people would go to therapy for, but I don't know. I even think financial therapy is kind of like a niche, probably. I don't know many people that are like, I talk to my therapist about finances. I don't know that many people.
And most therapists also don't even specialize in financial therapy, right? Because the thing is, if you're not financially literate yourself, how are you going to give your clients, help in that area? Or if you have a lot of money traumas yourself. Yeah. So I think that's another issue that I see often happening. But there are some that are specialized, they focus on that. But I think a lot of people also are like, I have so many other traumas. Please, we need to focus on these before we get to the money. But I will say that money impacts every single part of your life. So if you can uncover some money traumas, it can really help you in other areas of your life as well.
100%. 100%. I love the thing about putting things into pots. I know Monzo is in the UK. I don't think they're in the US or in Canada. And Revolut, I think that one rounds up like what you spend and puts it in a savings. But with Monzo, you can create a pot that you cannot touch. And I was saying to my friend the other day, I was like, I have no intention, God willing, all goes well and life goes and plays along. I have no intention of missing the Men's World Cup in North America in, I think it's 2025 or 2026. I was like, I'm going. And she was like, but we have to start saving from now. I was like, well, then let's start putting money away in our like Monzo or a pot or in an account, because when you go for the World Cup, it's not really the time you want to go and be like, I'm here, but I don't really have that much money. I'm trying not to have this many drinks. I don't want to go out and eat. I'm trying to you don't want to do that. You just want to enjoy it.
Yeah. And for example, like when Beyonce announced her Renaissance tour, I saw this person who posted, I have been ready for this. And they have been saving since her last tour, God knows when.
That.
And they had an account that they specifically named Beyonce, and they were putting money away into that account over and over every single month. And I'm like, this is the level of financial literacy that I love to see. It's just like me. I love to travel. Ever since I was in university, I knew that I wanted to travel. But again, I'm not someone who likes asking my parents for money at all. I don't think I've asked them for money since high school or something. So I knew that, okay, the $50 that I can afford to put away each month, I'm going to put it into this account. And then when I can afford more, now I put away more. And even when there's no travels plan, even when I have no trip plan, I still put away money into my travel fund. So yeah, I think having buckets, game changer. Honestly, it's one of the biggest changes that has really helped me. And it's also like, if you have, a lot of us have goals and we put them all in one pot, right? And we have our house fund, our car fund, our travel fund, everything's in one pot. But then sometimes it's like, oh, I need money for XYZ. And then you take it out of that account. But which goal did you just take it out of? Nobody knows. And then it gets really confusing. And then you can't track your progress towards your goals, right? So I'm a big believer in splitting up your goals, different place in different accounts.
I like that. I was on holiday with a friend and we're talking about bank accounts, and someone was like, isn't it just enough? Like, how many bank accounts does a person need? You don't need more than 3 or something. And I was like, fair enough, because I think, I mean, for me personally, my accounts do different things. One of my accounts is just for like my life, and that's where rent and everything comes out of. And then there's a layers account, which nothing happens on that account ever, just layer stuff. If there's anything for layers, it comes out of that account. And then there's, of course, Monzo that you just is for travel.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge that person and be like, I agree that having multiple accounts can be a lot. And what you really need is you need one main account, as you said. In Canada, we call it our checking account. I think they call it current. Is it current account?
Or a current account, yeah.
Yeah, which is where, your money is coming into. And then you can have your buckets. In Canada, I'm not sure about other countries, but in Canada and in the States, we have like within your one account, you can have multiple sub buckets in that same account. So it's not like you have to have like 10 different banks. It's just that you open buckets under your main savings account, and then each one is underneath your one bank account. So I get it. It can be confusing, and personal finance is extremely personal. So like pick the one that works best for your situation. Don't try to apply everyone else's things to you. Pick the one that makes most sense for your situation.
100%. Well, before we round up on our episode today, which has been wonderful and really informative, I have a couple of finance questions. So there might be people that are listening to the podcast thinking, all of this is wonderful and great, but I don't have savings. I'm thinking of leaving my job. I'm thinking of moving country. And honestly speaking, I don't even have the confidence to even know where to begin financially. What is a good starting point for a beginner in financial literacy?
Okay. Why? I would ask why you're leaving your job if okay. But what I would say is the basics would be I would say start with budgeting, as I mentioned before. If you're leaving your job, you're about to have no income, so I don't know about that. But I would say starting with your budgeting is the very bare minimum that I would say that everybody should start off with. And I may even tell you that you are not in a place to leave your job at all as well. I think confronting your finances head on rather than ignoring them is the place that you really need to start off with. So that's honestly where I would start. And then I think a lot of times we tell people to budget, but with the cost of living right now and, things are just very expensive. I think it's easier to increase your income than it is to lower your expenses. So I would also tell people to look into ways that they can invest in themselves to help them make more money so that they can then because it's easier to work with more money, obviously, than less money. You can't budget your way out of poverty. There are certain situations where like it's just going to be pretty rough. So I would tell a person to first start budgeting, like first understand what's coming into your account each month, what's going out, and then also try to increase your income as well, so you have more disposable income to do the things that you really want to do.
Perfect. I love that. Okay, loaning money. How much money? A friend of mine literally sent me a message. Sorry, I feel like I've been talking about all the conversations my friends and I have, but now it's made me realize we talk about money and finances a lot.
That's good. I love it.
I love it too, because it's like you're just comfortable. It's like, girl, we want to hang out on Saturday. I'm broke and I'm not going anywhere. Okay, it's fine. I'll come to your house and I'll bring food. Okay, wonderful. We can still hang out without that being a cost. Lending money. How do you set boundaries with people when it comes to lending money? Because I always say, I lend money from a place of, if I'm giving you this money, genuinely speaking, I'm expecting to never see it again. And if I do, I'm really happy. And if I don't, I wasn't expecting it in the first place. I'm only giving you what I'm happy and I'm okay with losing.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy on lending money.
I am with you. I am team. Do not lend any money that you cannot do without. Even
Yeah.
if it's your mother, even if it's your, like, no matter who it is, I'm so sorry. But if you
Mm-hmm.
cannot do without it, like I saw a tweet recently that said, life is, life hap she was basically saying she saved up $10,000 and then her
Mm-hmm.
mom had an emergency and needed 9,000 of that $10,000.
Ah.
And she was just about to buy a new car with that 10K. And I was like, I get it, but like, damn, that's rough. That's really, really rough. So I would tell everyone that don't let any money that you cannot afford to go without. Please, I'm begging you.
Was it a
And the
medical
reality is,
emergency?
girl, I don't even know, right? Like, I'm wondering
Because
what could have possibly cost $9,000. Yeah. And she said she'd been saving
wow.
for months and months and months, and she finally reached her goal, was about to buy her car, and the day before her mom called her, said she needed 9,000. I was like, huh. I was like, Jesus. Yeah. So, yeah, don't lend money that you cannot afford to do without, because the reality is, if you don't get it back, who's going to come and save you? Are you going to have to now go and borrow money from somebody else? Don't do it. Don't do
Yeah,
it.
don't do
Don't
it.
do it.
And my worst,
Mm-mm.
I hate asking people back for money. Like, it's
I know.
weird. I feel embarrassed. Like I'm asking to. Meanwhile, it's my money, but I feel embarrassed to have to come and ask
Can
you
you
for it.
imagine? Can you imagine? Like, you
Mhm.
should be running to return your money to me, but no, I have to
And I'm the
chase
one
you.
chasing
No.
you. No,
Yeah.
no.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Okay, what
Yeah.
about? I'm gonna get in trouble for this one. What about bill splitting? Like,
Ah.
if you go on holiday or you go out for a group dinner and it's like we're just all gonna split the bill equally, it's Rennie's birthday and someone's like, actually, I cannot do that and I don't want to do that. What are social etiquettes on bill splitting?
Okay. I
I'm gonna get in
feel
trouble.
like I feel like we should discuss before we get to the dinner so that we're all on the same page in an ideal world. Okay. Everybody should know that, hey, it's Rennie's birthday. We are all going to split the bill equally. And if you're not on board, you tell us beforehand. Okay. So it's not a surprise when the bill comes.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
personally, as a Nigerian, if you're coming to my birthday, honestly, like, I'm going to pay like, if I've invited everybody out, then typically I will just pay for everybody at the table. If you guys invited me out, I would expect that you will pay for
100%.
my meal. Yeah, as well.
Yeah.
So
If you're asking me to
that's
come out for my
but
birthday, it's on you guys. Yeah.
exactly. Don't ask me to pay anything. But I always go out knowing that I have my money in case I need to pay. If I knew that this was a restaurant that, oh, if they didn't pay, I would not be able to afford this, then I'm just gonna be like, unfortunately, guys, this is out of my budget. And I think people need to be more comfortable with saying this is out of my budget. Yeah. But in Canada, honestly,
100%.
we don't, yeah, right? Like, people need to just be comfortable with saying, unfortunately, the math's not mathing right now. I can't afford this right now. And your friends will do with that what they want. My friends have told me that, and I'm like, no problem. I got you. Come out with us anyways. Or it's like, okay, cool. See you next time. You know, like, and we need to get more comfortable with that, I think.
100%. I think open communication is important. Like, there is nothing wrong with just being like, this dinner that you guys want to split, like the way my finances are set up right now, and it's like, it's cool, it's calm, like we'll just supplement the fee or something. But I think that the open communication is always best, as opposed to after the dinner being like, well, this was cute, but I won't be paying for that. I think it muddies the water a bit.
100%. Yeah, that's the recipe for beef, having a fight with your friends.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And last question before we leave. What is the worst piece of financial advice you've ever heard or you've ever gotten?
I feel like Dave Ramsey gives a lot of bad financial advice. I'm sure many people know him. He's like the OG finance creator or whatever. But he tells people, like, buy a home in cash only, and don't invest in anything but mutual funds. Like, I feel like his advice is very outdated, and he speaks from a place of privilege, because how many people can afford to buy a house cash? That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of his advice is the worst advice that I have ever heard before. Yeah. Yeah, I like anybody who knows me, who's followed me for a while, know I'm not a Dave Ramsey fan at all.
Yeah.
I think there are some parts that can help you when you're at your very beginning, especially if you're in debt. But the majority of things are very like extreme and make no sense for the average person. So yeah, that would be my answer. Yeah.
I love it. I watched a TikTok on, I think it was like Beyonce and Jay-Z have a mortgage and here are all the financial benefits for them having the mortgage. And I was like, how interesting. I would have never thought that, because you think if you had their kind of money, you would just be like, I'm just buying cash. But it
Exactly.
works investment wise, I guess, for them to have a mortgage.
Exactly. If your interest rate on your mortgage is 2% or something, and you can make 7% on your money if you put it in the stock market, then it makes a lot more sense to just put your money in the stock market. So
yeah, it's very interesting. Actually, I lied about that last question. I have a last question. Before I let you go, I know you have to get ready. I went to a financial talk, I think it was this year, last year, and someone was saying you'll never really know. Money is the kind of thing that you never really understand and never really figure out unless you have it. And until you have money, you won't understand it. And I was like, I don't know if I agree with that. Is that true? Somewhat true? Not true?
I feel like there are certain conversations regarding money that people won't understand unless you reach that certain level of money. Like if billionaires or millionaires are not having conversations about budgeting and like saving money on groceries, or like they're not, those are couponing, like those are not the conversations that they're having, right? So I feel like I agree to an extent, because it's, for example, I used to work with a lot of investment advisors, and their clients were ultra high net worth clients who have like over $250,000 of investable assets or more. So they just have an extra $250K lying around to invest and give to this advisor, right? The conversations that they're having are like, when I die, how do I pass on these 10 properties to my kids and pay and give them the least amount of tax possible? Or another conversation, how do I gift money to a charity to lower my taxable income significantly? Or how do I give money to my cat? Like these are conversations that we're not privy to. Okay. We can't relate. So I agree to a certain extent that some of the conversations, they just aren't relatable to us until you actually reach that level. Yeah. And you kind of have to shift your mindset when you do get to that level, because if you like Ramit Sethi, who is the author of I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He talks a lot about like how now he's a multimillionaire. He's not having the $3 conversations or the $30 conversations. He's having the $30,000 conversations where it's like, he's not worrying about, this, when you go to the grocery store and like, there's a pack of chicken for $9.78, and there's one for $9.50, and you pick the one that is $9.50. He's like, I don't worry about these things. I don't even go grocery shopping anymore. I just pay someone, because the $10 fee that they're going to charge me to pick up my groceries is worth my time, right? So he's having the $30,000 conversations, and I think that we can't really have those conversations, because at this point we're not there yet. But we should be aspiring to have those conversations one day, and we'll be able to relate soon. Yeah.
Yes. Fingers crossed. Amen. Manifesting and all that good stuff. No, honestly speaking, I'm like, I can't, one thing I love in life is convenience, and I cannot wait to just be able to be like, I'm paying for convenience. I don't want to think about cooking. I don't want to think about laundry. I don't want to think about cleaning. I just want to just live my life.
I know, I'm the same way. I'm like, I pay for a deep clean for the house for the first time. I'm like, this is the life I need, okay? I need someone to be cleaning it every 2 weeks or something.
Every 2 weeks,
and then like I got to sit first class, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. So yeah, I'm like, one day I will. And now I have a like Amex Platinum card. I am able to sit in the lounges, and I'm like, these are the perks that come with more money that I would never even thought of even last year. So I'm like, we need to keep leveling up. Yeah,
we need to keep leveling up. You know, it's so funny. I remember when I got upgraded to business class, and I think it was the first time as an adult, because when we were younger, my dad would fly everyone like first class, and then as we go older, he was see you guys, bye, off to economy you go. And I think as an adult, I got upgraded to business class one time, and I remember when I reclined the seat, it was because I never sleep well on a night flight. I reclined the seat and I lay down flat, and I was like, I can never go back to economy. I literally lay there like I will never go back to economy. And I think that sometimes you have little tasters of these things and you're like, yeah, this has ruined it now. Because you didn't know it before, but now it's ruined it. I can never be broke again. Ryanair is an airline that will make you work hard. The amount of times I've sat down on a Ryanair flight and just thought, God, I don't want to be a mechanic. I want to be a baller.
Nah, for real.
I'll take it.
Nah, Ryanair, Spirit, EasyJet, they will humble you. They will really humble you.
Great motivators.
For real, honestly.
They're great motivators.
And that's like that. We're on the Ryanair flight because it's 30 pounds or whatever. And they're like, 300 pounds extra. Let's go buy. And we're like, we can't relate, right? At this point. But soon we will be able to relate. Soon we'll be able to.
Also, air miles, please use them, guys. Those of you Nigerians that are flying BA back and forth, please be using your Avios points to book your flights in Europe. Like, it would take off so much for you, honestly. And sometimes the business class is cheaper than the economy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, sometimes with BA.
I've been learning a lot about...
For sure. Go ahead, sorry.
I think I've been learning a lot about travel hacking. So I've seen people getting really cheap flights using their points. And I'm like, I need to get on this. I need to get on it soon. Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know how much I paid for business class on BA to Nice. This was like in June, literally at the start of summer. I think I paid like 140 or something, 140, maybe 60 pounds. And I was like, what? Wow. Wow. Okay. Okay. Wow. I'm shocked. I was expecting a lot more, and the economy price was a lot more expensive without the points even. So some hacks for you. Rennie, thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really appreciate you being here, and I've had a wonderful conversation with you, and I'm sure both our audiences will really enjoy this conversation as well.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to be on the podcast.
Yes. Stay with us, subscribe, follow, like, and we have lots of fun conversations coming up. So I'm glad to have you here. If you are, well, not if you are, Rennie is a wonderful resource for all things travel, finance. I feel like you don't say style, but I think style is in there for me as well. And all around fun. And all around fun, honestly. Her Coin Fashions segments of her podcast are hilarious as well as informative. So please do follow her on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast on Don't Go Broke Trying. And you can also find her on Instagram at XORennie. And you'll have a wonderful time. I'll tell you that for free.
Yes, come through. We have a great time over here,
Thanks, Rennie.